This is a very special episode today. I'm interviewing my friend and client, Miss Sandra Sage. Now, Sandra is a professional public speaker, she's a published author, she's a master certified life coach, and she's also a victim advocate. Her work is extremely powerful, and I know that it will help millions, if not billions, of people around the world. So, we're going to get into this interview today, but first, for the benefit of everyone watching, Sandra, how did you get into this line of work with life coaching?
Well, I think it's my calling. and I had a long catering career for nearly 32 years, and it was a beautiful career. But in the middle of that, I began writing the life stories of senior citizens. And through that, for 12 years, I've written 55 life stories. And through that journey, it's like life is like a puzzle, and all the pieces have to fit. And they don't all come at once. But interviewing those seniors that were all part of World War II, I realized that they trusted me, men who had never even told their sons what happened in the war. And all of a sudden, these people sitting at their kitchen table across from them with a little tape recorder, they're trusting me. And then somehow, through that, I knew there was another piece of the puzzle, my last part of my life's work. And I knew that if those seniors could trust me, that women would trust me too.
Mm.
And that was the first part of it. But the bigger part of it is, I help women with trauma. I help anybody with trauma because I've had a lot of trauma in my life. But I wanted to help women through childhood sexual abuse because I lived that life. And my oldest daughter asked me in, I think, 2010, if I would please write a book about my life story. And had I ever thought about doing that? And I said, well, I kind of was going to do that for you kids, but not for the world to see. She said, Mom, I think you need to do it. So I started writing immediately, and it just all came. And through that process, I realized that her asking me was just the catalyst
Wow.
to write the book, because the book was really for women, to help women because of what I had experienced in my childhood. And in that 10 years that it took me to write, along that journey is also when I decided to become a life coach. And it just all kind of, the pieces of the puzzle fit.
Wow. So the women that you help, and clearly this is an invaluable service. We know how many women go through sexual trauma at some point in their lives. Um, what inspired you to? I know you said your daughter was a catalyst for that, but what inspired you to write this book, and how do you think it's going to help women going through that same situation?
Well, it already has helped women because I was a victim of childhood sexual abuse. And my mother was an alcoholic. I was taken out of the home at 15, and I lived 15 years of my mother's emotional, physical, and mental abuse in a drunken state.
Mm.
And what she never knew, and no one ever knew, is that my father started molesting me at age 6 until I was taken out of the home. And I never told, and no one ever knew that he did that. So I carried that shame. Even though I was taken out of the home, I carried that shame. And I covered it up by always being a good girl. I had to be such a good girl because I felt so dirty inside and I had so much shame inside. So I married young, I had children young, and I just became like this wonderful little Susie homemaker living this pretend little life. And the more I could do, the more busy I was that I didn't have to think about it. I never thought about it. And it wasn't until in my 30s that all of a sudden pain found me and I couldn't hide anymore. I couldn't stuff this erosion deep down inside of me down any deeper. I had to take care of it. And I did. And I found an amazing psychotherapist. Um, and he helped me. It was 3 years of therapy. And, when I went in, I was a victim. I was a victim of childhood sexual abuse. But it's like he told me, you've lived your whole life as a victim. Do you want to continue living as a victim? Do you want to be a survivor all your life? Or do you want to just live a real, whole life, like a whole person? And that was my goal. So it was a good year, the first year of just learning to forgive. And it was a long, long walk through that shame. And there were a few times I got up and said a couple of bad words and slammed the door and left his office, but I always came back. I didn't want to hear some of the things he said, but you know what? I did it. And you have to do the work and you have to walk through the shame. So I did all of that, and my whole life changed. My whole life changed. And again, after my daughter asked me to start writing my story, I did. And it's just everything that I was supposed to do has just come to me. And in coaching these women, the way that I have been able, and with their help together, we have done this. I can't even begin to explain. One young woman was 28 and came to me, and she had never told a soul.
Wow.
And the first, it was supposed to be an hour session, and it turned into 4 hours. And the first hour, she did nothing but cry. And I just let her have her space, and I let her cry. And she couldn't stop sobbing. And she finally was able to purge just in the next 3 hours what had happened to her. And she became very, very committed. And I would say she's one of the young women that has grown the most. And so for me to love her through that process and to help her get to the other side of it's so huge. You can't put a dollar bill on it. You can't, it's just, I'm very connected to that.
I love that. Wow, that is so powerful. You're changing people's lives, but it's more than that. It's transformational. You're helping somebody step into the person they were meant to be.
They're meant to be. Yes.
You're giving them a voice. And for so many women, they may have felt their whole life that they had to shove it down, keep it quiet, keep it inside. They felt like a victim, but you're turning it around to where they feel victorious.
Yes, yes. Even successful women still hide behind their success.
Yeah.
And they can be, in a business world, very successful, even successful with their family. But until you walk through that shame and forgive yourself, because 100% of women who have been sexually abused as a child take on that shame. And that's why they don't talk about it, because they feel that it was their fault. Just like in a date rape, most of the time, it's not even reported because no one will believe them. It's the same thing with a little girl. For instance, that young girl I just talked about, when she told her mother did not believe her. So that absolutely said to her, no one is going to believe me.
If your mother can't believe you,
who's going to believe me?
Who can? And there's so many people just like that going through this exact same situation right now. So going back to the book, you wrote your life story in it. And it was cathartic for you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's just really interesting. I think the very next day, I just said, okay, I'm going to do this. I never had an outline, nothing. I just sat down. I never had titles. It's a really interesting thing. When you commit to something, everything I was flooded. I was just flooded. I would be prepping food for catering, and these thoughts, and I'd have to go scribble them down. And now I had to have files for all my thoughts. And I didn't know what chapter that was going to go in, but I opened up like a can of worms, but a good can. And it was painful. I cannot even believe what I remember as a child. And my memory goes back to around 2.5, 3 years old. So I just started. Every chapter is about a different age and what was going on.
Wow.
And Actually, I have 4 really good friends from 7th grade. We all met, and they all 4, almost like a book club, read the book at the same time. And one of them called me. She finished first, and I think that was a 3-hour conversation. And she said, "How in the world did you go to school every day, and we all hung out together, and sometimes on the weekends, and we never ever knew about this?" And I'll tell you why. Because when you're a victim of childhood sexual abuse, you are taught to keep secrets. And because through the 50s and 60s, and it's still the same way, it's not only a taboo subject, but it's still this way. You're a victim, and the person who is abusing you threatens you with death, threatens. My father threatened me that because my mother was an alcoholic, who will take care of your mother? If you ever say anything, I'll do this, this, and this to you. You are so afraid, and you live in fear, and you are taught how to keep a secret. And you're good. You're really good at it. And I was so good that my best friends didn't even know until they read my book.
Wow.
And that's the whole point, is even if you go through marriage and it's successful and you have children and you have this happy family, you still have this stuff, this erosion that's deep inside of you. And sometimes then when something else catastrophic or something, a death or something happens in your life, it triggers that trauma that you've experienced, and you don't know what's wrong with you. And the next thing you know, you think you're having a midlife crisis, and you're really not. You just haven't taken care of the old stuff.
That's powerful. You have to heal the wound.
You have to walk through the shame, and you have to heal. You have to get to the other side of it. And that's what I help women do. And I love them through it. And I'm empowering them, and I'm their cheerleader and their advocate during the process. And I'm tough too. I give assignments and, a lot of books to read, but there's just so much that, and I feel like I learn from them, each new client, and it's just, I feel very blessed that God has asked me to take this on, because it's not easy, because people want to sweep it under the carpet still. It's huge.
Yeah. And you and I have talked a lot about purpose. That's a topic that we're both very passionate about. And obviously, what you went through as a child, unimaginable. However, because you've been there, you know what it's like for these other women, and you have a unique perspective. So in a way, it helped you step into really your purpose.
Into my purpose. The minute Kelly asked me to write this book, I knew, may have been a couple years, but through that process, I'm like, I think there's something bigger to this. I think there's something bigger.
Yeah.
And through that, I think it was finally about probably maybe 3 or 4 years in, one day I'm sitting at my desk, and whatever chapter I was working on, and then something just came to me. And I remember saying, like whispering to myself, this is more than just for my children. This is for women. This is for women.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've shared some powerful statistics as well with me about childhood sexual abuse. It's astounding how frequent this is and how pervasive this is. And it's not one country or state. This is a global phenomenon, and it's happening everywhere to children. But, they say 1 in 4 women are sexually abused. But what are some of the statistics?
1 in 4 girls and 1 in 53 boys under the age of 18 will be sexually abused.
Incredible. And how many billions of people that's impacted?
Billions. And yet we have a society that wants to talk about everything else but no one wants to take care of this. You talk about mental health.
Yeah.
We need to clean this up. And if we can't clean up the predators, the pedophiles, and we're not going to do anything about that, then let's help the victims.
Absolutely. Let's help the victims 100% and give them a voice and a
Yes.
chance to live, because so often they're stuck in that cycle of being a victim, of being quiet, of not being their true selves. And it can lead to depression, it can lead to anxiety, it can lead to suicide, it can lead to so many things. So we have to help these women. And your book is a perfect example of that. But you also are brave enough, and thank you for being so brave, to share your story on the stage as a
Yes.
professional public speaker and delivering this story, which is so impactful and powerful to audiences. How does that feel when you step up on stage and you deliver that energy to them? How does that feel?
I want to say it's powerful, but it's not like I'm doing it to take any credit. It's I usually don't have eye contact because I know what's going on in the audience. I can feel it. You can hear a pin drop.
Wow.
You can feel it. You can feel the energy. All the energy changes. And some of it's uncomfortable. It's painful. It's painful to hear about my story for people, but the people in the audience that have had children, or they know of someone, or if it's happened to them, it moves them. And I'm just the vehicle to get the message out. That's what I am. So it's like my job. It's what I need to do. Is it fun to talk about? Not really, but it's the truth. And if people are going to face the facts and face the truth, then we need to talk about the truth. So it's a big job. I'm up for it. And I feel like I had to go through it in order to help people with it.
Yeah.
And I
Wow.
feel it's my calling. And I don't want to be ashamed about my calling. I'm proud. I'm proud, not what happened to me, but I'm proud that I did not continue my parents' behavior, and I broke the cycle, and I did not abuse my children, and that now I can take my knowledge, what I have of it, which is a lot, and I can, in a passionate, with empathy type of coaching,
Mm-hmm.
and be someone's cheerleader. And I create a space that women are so comfortable with me, and they trust me, and they can, because it's all confidential, and they can pour their heart and their guts out and finally get it out.
Wow.
And if they only need to do it one time and they never come again, that's fine. It's whatever work they need to do. It's not up to me. It's their own personal experience. But it's what I'm supposed to do. I guess that's the best way to answer your question.
Yeah.
It's not like, I guess there would be other careers that would be a lot more fun. So it's not really fun. It's really draining. When you work with women, it's really draining, because you have so much empathy for these people because you know what it is. And yet you keep doing it because it's one more woman. It's one more woman. It's one more young teenager that is healed, and they're healed, and they're healed. That's why I do it. I can't say no.
I know. It's so powerful. I mean, you're doing God's work. There's no question about it. Your purpose is so powerful, Sandra, and it's so inspiring to me. And I know it will be to so many people watching this right now. I just want to take a pause. And of course, we're doing this interview. We're in person. This is the kind of interview that you only do in person. My goal was to really uncover what Sandra did for her work and who she helped, who she served, but ultimately why she's the best person for this. And she's the best person for this because this is her purpose and why she is here on planet Earth right now. She is doing God's work to help women who have been abused, who have been mistreated, who have experienced sexual trauma. There's billions out there who need her help. And she is the absolute best suited person for this. It's so powerful. And I'm so blessed to know you and to be a part of this movement because honestly, I feel like this is going to start a movement. What you're seeing right here today is the beginning of something major. This is going to be distributed to thousands and thousands of people. And I encourage everyone watching this video to share it, to share this video with someone. Maybe you know someone who has been a victim of trauma. Share it and contact Sandra. Absolutely. She is the best person for this. Mm-hmm. What kind of experiences have your clients had after working with you, Sandra? What have you seen a transformational change happen with them?
Oh yeah. One young girl in her 20s, when she came to me after at the end of the first session, she was kind of out of words, and then she just looked up at me and she said, "Next year on my birthday, I don't want to feel like this. I want to be changed." I said, "Well, then we've got a lot of work to do." So after a year had gone by, and it was a little over a year, I reminded her of that statement. Actually, I'd written it down, and she said, "I'm not that person anymore."
Wow. Oh my gosh. Whew. You changed your life. You changed your life. And because of your work, she was able to live again.
Live again.
Not just exist, not just survive, but thrive. It's not about existing. It's about thriving
Mm-hmm.
and taking ownership of your life again.
Yes.
Because as a victim, you've had that life taken from you. And a piece of your soul is missing.
Yes. My therapist, after I had forgiven my mother, which wasn't that hard, but father, that was tough. That took a long time, but I finally did it. So after that, I came back in his office that day, and he said, "You know," this is probably the only compliment he ever gave me. He wasn't big on fluff.
Right.
So he said, "You were a victim, and you've been a victim your whole life." And he said, "You actually, in reality, should have been a drug addict, a prostitute, an alcoholic, in a mental institution, tried to commit suicide." He goes, "I could go down the list." He said, "You're none of those things." He said, "You're a survivor. But are you tired of being a victim and a survivor?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, there is one thing that you are." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "You are a huge codependent, but now we're going to start working on that." I didn't even know what that was at the time.
Right.
And that was our next step. We started working on that, and one step at a time, one book at a time, we got through it. And I've lived ever since a very successful life and a happy life. I'm just, I think what this taught me the most in my childhood and what I've done is the power of forgiveness. And that's one of the things I work on, because if we cannot forgive and let go of whoever, my mother and my father, whoever violated you,
Right.
then you're wasting your time and your money. We have to forgive. But most of all, most of all, where it starts is you have to forgive yourself. And if you can forgive anybody, but if you cannot forgive yourself, well, we got to back the bus up because we got to start there.
Yes.
So you're forgiving whoever violated you, the parent that didn't believe you, all the people, the players. It may even be just one, it may be 10. You got to forgive all those people, and it's one person at a time we got to forgive, and we got to work on that. But most of all, you got to forgive you.
Yeah.
And when we do that, that's the step through the shame. You walk through your shame. You don't walk around it. You don't bury it anymore. We're going to walk through it together. And you're going to come out a new person on the other side.
I love that. It's so important because as a victim, you feel alone. You feel like you're the only person going through this. You feel like no one's going to understand you. You feel alone.
All alone.
But you're not alone, are you?
No.
Especially if somebody works with you who's experienced, who's been in their shoes, who knows their story.
Mm-hmm.
They're not alone. They don't have to be.
They don't have to be.
They don't have to be alone. So powerful, so impactful. Show us your book, because I do want to show the audience your book, and it's called Where Hope and Mercy Meet. And this is Sandra's story. This is her story of her childhood, of her trauma with her father and her mother, but how she overcame that to step into her purpose, to align with her purpose, and to ultimately help people in her same position. And she knows it better than anybody. Sandra, your work is inspiring. You're going to change lives. You're going to change the world. I'm so proud to call you my friend.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad to go on this journey with you. So powerful. But again, please share this message. This is real. This is impactful. And the work that she's doing is with the goal of changing as many lives as possible. And together, there's nothing we can't accomplish.
Exactly. Exactly.
I
know it because I've done it. I've done it. And I've gotten to be blessed to watch the women I've helped come through it on the other side.
Yes. The other side. There is another side for every victim out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beyond that light at the end of the tunnel. And if you work with somebody like Sandra, your life will be forever changed. Thank you so much, my beautiful friend.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. And I look forward to your journey. And I'm blessed to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a tearjerker. Sandra is a very powerful person. She's amazing at what she does, and she helps people on a whole different level. Thank you for everything.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.